Hi, I'm Steve Francks. I'm the CEO of the Washington Realtors, and I'm here with Nathan Gorton, our Government Affairs Director. And we are here with part 2 of our 2019 state legislative update. Last time we talked to you about budget issues. This video we're going to talk about the successes that we enjoyed with our Unlock the Door for Affordable Housing campaign. Many of you have seen that. We know we've done a survey of our membership, and something on the order of 87% of our members were familiar with that campaign after only 3 months. So if our members were aware of it, certainly state legislators were as well. And we had some really good successes as a result of that, starting with our condominium liability reform package. So Nathan, why don't you bring us up to speed on that?
Yeah, right. That was a bill that we've been after for the last several years. There are several reasons why builders aren't building condominiums right now in our communities, which we know can be a really great opportunity for first-time homeowners. And one of those reasons is liability and the fact that developers can be sued over not actual defects, but potential defects. And so that standard makes it a little bit challenging. So we worked with a number of legislators. We worked with folks actually from the trial lawyers and with the builders to kind of simplify it a little bit. And actually, the governor just signed that bill into law, big win. And really, it's a fairly simple bill. And essentially what it says is that you can only sue a builder for actual defects. Sounds really easy, sounds very simple. I'll tell you this, there is a developer that I know fairly well here in Olympia that has done a lot of different projects, a lot of different multi-use projects with apartments. And I showed him the bill and I said, what would happen if the legislature passes this bill? And his words were, if they pass it about like this, you're going to see a mini condo boom in Washington state.
You know, and I can tell you, I've been with Washington Realtors for over 20 years now, and I have rarely seen the kind of energy and passion from our grassroots membership about, as we saw, about the need for condominium liability reform. So it's very gratifying that we're able to get this bill passed after a couple of years of working real hard towards that. The only other, well, not the only, but another bill or another issue that generated this kind of passion was water issues with regard to the Hearst decision. And of course that affected our rural members. So we've had a lot of energy on the rural side, a lot of energy on the urban side, but we work for all of our realtor members. And so we're real glad we were able to get that bill passed.
Yeah.
So how about, speaking of urban areas, one of our bills deals with increased density. So Nathan, tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting bill. That, especially around transit areas in bigger cities, cities of 20,000 residents or above, encourages cities to take a look at ways that they can add responsible density. Things like accessory dwelling units, allowing duplexes and triplexes in single-family areas, right? Things like cluster zoning and things like that. And there's actually a list of actions they can take. And the legislature decided to shield the cities from any lawsuits to the Growth Management Hearings Board over taking those actions, and also provided some money for the different city staffs to do the work that is needed to adopt these ordinances. So we think that not only are you going to see a little mini condo boom here in the near future, but I think that you're going to see more accessory dwelling units, more duplexes, more triplexes, as our state grapples with the inventory shortage and really supplying that missing middle that so many cities desperately need.
So our Unlock the Door legislative agenda for affordable housing had something on the order of 15 bills that we had brought up to the legislature, and quite a few of them got passed. Why don't you just give us one or two more that matter to our members?
Yeah, sure. In addition to the condo liability, which was of course sort of the headliner, and then the density bill, which was also a very important bill for us as well. There were also bills that allowed for more money for government-assisted housing. That was something that we supported. We do believe that there is a shortage of housing on all rungs of the ladder. And so we were happy to support that. That bill ended up passing. There was a bill that exempted self-help housing from certain taxes. Self-help housing is essentially Habitat for Humanity's project. So that was a nice win for Habitat for Humanity, who was part of our group effort. One of the bills that failed, unfortunately, was an expansion of the multifamily tax credit for affordable rentals, and we were hoping to expand that program. It's proven to be very effective. That bill didn't make it this year, but we'll be back again next year on that bill.
Right. So we had a lot of successes in this session, both on the revenue side and on the policy side. We also had a couple of bumps in the road, and one of them dealt with some revisions to landlord-tenant law. So Nathan, why don't you kind of tell everybody what the status is on that bill?
Yeah, the legislature, to their credit, really dug deep into homelessness and housing policy issues this session. And a lot of what they did, we really liked. There was a study that came out, I want to say it was Harvard, but maybe that's not the case. But there was a study that came out from a professor who said that tenants who are evicted is one of the leading causes of homelessness. It's a very tough topic to talk about, right? It's a very emotional topic. And we tried to talk to legislators about it, and it was very clear from the beginning that this session was going to be a session where tenants ended the session with more rights, which we weren't necessarily opposed to, but we wanted it to be in a balanced way. And so the tenant advocates really focused on the 3-day eviction notice, right? And many in the legislature, despite our best efforts to educate them, thought that meant that people were being evicted in 3 days. Because anybody watching this who is a landlord, works with landlords, knows that's not the case, right? It takes a long time to evict somebody in this state. But that being said, the advocates painted a picture and the legislature decided to act. So among other things, they moved that 3-day eviction notice to a 14-day eviction notice. So it's going to be a little longer, it's going to be a little tougher to evict a tenant for non-payment. You know, there are legislators that were really, really passionate about that and saying that if we want to end homelessness, this is something we have to look at. You know, we pointed out that just because a tenant doesn't pay their rent, it's not like the landlord gets to not pay their mortgage. And so the legislature was willing to work with us a little bit on making the bill a little bit better, but they really insisted on that 14-day period being in there.
Yeah, it was very challenging, and you probably don't know this, but Nathan actually serves on the board and has been the president of a local Olympia nonprofit that does great work in trying to address the homeless problem in Olympia. So he has a lot of credibility on that issue, and even with that, the legislature was pretty dug in, and it was going to be a tough sell on that particular bill. But just to finish up, and we talked about this on the last video, but want to remind everybody, or maybe if you didn't see the other video, that there were a couple of really, really important wins for the transaction in the last legislative session. One of them dealt with the protection of independent contractor status. There had been a proposal to move a lot of individuals from independent contractor to employee status in many industries. So Nathan, wanted you to bring everybody up to speed on that just one more time?
Yeah, so that bill, it would have adopted a new test for independent contractors, and that bill ended up dying. But before it died, we were able to work with sponsors to get language in it that would have made clear that realtors are independent contractors. That bill is now going to an interim work session, and most of us expect that to be passed in the next year or two, and we'll be represented on that work committee, and we'll make sure that we keep watching that bill, but we feel pretty good about it.
Right. And then the last bill that we want to tell you about today is a bill that had been introduced that would have significantly undermined the dual agency concept in real estate in the state of Washington, particularly with regard to in-house transactions. It was purportedly a bill that was introduced in the commercial real estate space, but the way it was written, it would have affected residential real estate as well. And we were able to get that bill killed in committee in both houses. But Nathan, why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, interesting bill that kind of came out of nowhere, and it was poorly written, but essentially it would have required anybody in a dual agent situation, right? Keeping in mind, dual agent situation means in-house transaction, right? It's not just one agent has both the buyer and the seller, it's representing both of them. It means that one company is representing both the buyer and the seller. And it would have required that the two parties in a dual agency transaction would have been required to have attorneys as part of that transaction, signing off every step of the way. So yeah, we were able to talk to legislators about sort of some of the misinformation that came out about that, and we were able to quietly kill it.
Yeah, and that was a real illustration of the power of the realtor party concept, which means that when we're here in Olympia, we're not Republicans, we're not Democrats, we're not independents, we are realtors, and we support legislators or candidates who support our issues, and therefore we're pretty bipartisan, and we were able to work with some committee chairs that were willing to listen, and we have the credibility to explain. For example, the bill talked about fiduciary duties. We don't have fiduciary duties in Washington. So we were able to help explain that we're not attorneys either. So this is not a situation where one attorney is representing both parties in a lawsuit. So the realtor party concept really worked very well in that situation. So that kind of sums it up for a legislative session 2019. I'm going to give these guys a couple of days to rest, and then we're going to be right back getting ready for legislative session 2020. There's a lot of work to be done in the interim. We know there's going to be some challenges as always, but we're looking forward to it. And in the meantime, any questions, make sure you contact us. But thank you for listening, and thank you for being members of the Washington Realtors.
Thank you.